Hello, I'm Choi Youngja. Please listen to my heartbreaking story. Double tap to continue. Before you continue, please hit subscribe and like, it really helps. Family, the name that began a betrayal. Where did it end? I'm 72 years old. I may be an old woman, but I'm a certified master craftsperson who has been making traditional fermented soy products for 50 years. Solbaram Jangdokdae in Yangpyeong, Gyeonggi Province. This tranquil place of 5,000 pyeong is where I devoted my entire life. When morning comes, sunlight filtering through the pine trees illuminates hundreds of fermentation jars, and the fragrance of time-crafted fermentation rises from within. I lived here making soybean paste and soy sauce. Especially the 100-year-old seed soy sauce, passed down from my great-grandmother, was our family's soul and pride. But lately my knees stopped listening to me. When I woke up in the morning, my joints ached, and even going up and down the fermentation yard became difficult. After turning 70, my body wasn't what it used to be. The hospital recommended artificial joint surgery, and I began seriously considering retirement. Then one day, my son Minho and daughter-in-law Sujin came to visit. "Mother, we'll take care of you," Minho said, holding my hand tightly. Tears even moistened the corners of his eyes. My daughter-in-law Sujin nodded beside him and added, "Mother, we'll inherit the tradition. You've protected all your life and globalize it. Please rest comfortably." How much I had wanted to hear those words. My apprentice manager Kim started to say something next to me, but closed his mouth. I ignored his concern. They're blood relatives. My own children. Surely they wouldn't deceive their mother. "All right, you inherit it. But there's one condition." I took a sip of tea with trembling hands and continued. "You must keep the traditional manufacturing method. Especially never touch the seed soy sauce jars. That's the soul of our family's 100 years. "Of course, Mother. We promise," Minho answered readily, and Sujin smiled brightly. That day I called a lawyer and drafted a gift deed with conditions. I transferred all the land and manufacturing facilities to my son, with conditions clearly stated to maintain traditional methods and preserve the seed soy sauce. The moment I stamped it, I saw manager Kim's face darken. But I was just filled with joy. My child will carry on my will. What happiness could be greater than this? On the evening after the contract was completed and they left, I accidentally overheard their conversation outside the main gate. "Finally we can smell money from that stinking mold pit." It was Sujin's voice. Minho giggled and replied, 5,000 pyeong is worth over 10 billion won at market price. Building a cafe will be a jackpot. In that moment my heart sank, but I tried to shake off that anxiety. Surely, I must have heard wrong. I wanted to believe that. Trust cracking, greed seeping through the gap. The property transfer was completed a month later. All documents were stamped, and legally this land became Minho's. That's when things started to change. At first it was small things. Every time Minho visited, he started saying, "Mother, this jar method is too inefficient." Sujin laughed. "Who makes fermented foods this slowly these days?" "Minho, fermented foods are crafted by time. If you rush, the taste won't come out." I spoke as if teaching, but Minho shook his head. "Mother, you don't understand business. If we switch to large stainless steel tanks, production will increase tenfold. That's factory style, not tradition." "Mother, tradition is good but we need to make money." "Like this, we're losing money." Irritation was mixed in Minho's voice. Daughter-in-law Sujin was more blatant. One day she pointed at the old tree at the entrance of the fermentation yard and said, "Mother, we need to cut down this tree. We're making a gallery here and the tree is in the way." "What? That tree has been protected by our family for 3 generations. You can't touch it carelessly." When I shouted loudly, Sujin looked at me with an expression of disbelief. "Mother, what era is this to fuss about trees? It's just an ornamental tree." That night, manager Kim came to see me. His face was serious. "Ma'am, lately suspicious people have been walking around the factory site at night. They look like surveyors, measuring something." "Surveyors?" "Yes. And I also saw the young master meeting with people from an architectural design office. They were looking at cafe blueprints." My heart pounded, but I tried to stay calm. Surely my child wouldn't deceive his mother. "Don't worry too much, Manager Kim." "Ma'am, but, it's okay. I know Minho well. He wouldn't do that." I sent Manager Kim away, but I couldn't sleep that night. Anxiety pressed on my chest. The jars of the fermentation yard visible outside the window shone lonely under the moonlight. A few days later, Minho came again. This time he was holding a bundle of documents. "Mother, please sign this." "What is it?" "It's a consent form for factory facility renovation. You're registered as an honorary advisor in name, so your signature is needed." I opened the documents and read through them. The phrase removal of traditional jars and introduction of modern equipment caught my eye. "This won't do." "Removing the jars?" "Mother, business can't go on like this. We keep losing money. What do you want us to do? The losses are because you can't manage properly, not because of the jars. Mother, Minho shouted. It was the first time I'd seen him like this. He caught his breath and spoke again. Mother, this land is mine now. It's legally in my name. This isn't something for you to interfere with. I was at a loss for words at that statement. I never dreamed such words would come from my child's mouth. Minho gathered up the documents and turned coldly as he left. Mother, we'll proceed even if you don't sign. I have the authority. After Minho left, I sat there dazed for a long time. Manager Kim came beside me and carefully spoke. Ma'am, you need to prepare countermeasures now. Countermeasures? Check the contract again. There should be a clause allowing gift cancellation in case of condition violation. I shook my head. I still didn't want to believe it. My child wouldn't go that far, I vaguely hoped. But that was my delusion. A few days later, an even bigger shock awaited me. The most painful betrayal comes from the closest person. The day I happened to visit Minho's office I saw their true faces. The door was slightly open, and I could hear Minho and Sujin's conversation inside. Honey, the loan sharks called again. They say we're in big trouble if we don't pay back 20 million won by this week. Sujin's voice was urgent. I know, my head is killing me too. I lost 300 million won on stocks. How am I supposed to make that up? That's why let's quickly demolish the fermentation yard and build the cafe. Just selling the land puts 10 billion won in our hands. The problem is mother. We can't do anything while she's holding out. I held my breath outside the door and listened to their conversation. My whole body felt like it was freezing. Then what do? We can't persuade mother. Persuade nothing. We just remove her. Remove her? What do you mean? Mother's knee surgery. We use that as an excuse to admit her to a nursing hospital in Seoul. If she stays about a month, meanwhile we can demolish everything and start cafe construction. But still, that's a bit what? The loan sharks are choking us right now. Are we going to leisurely talk about tradition? Anyway, mother is old so her memory is hazy. Later, we can just say she has dementia and that's it. Sujin giggled and laughed. My legs lost strength and I almost collapsed right there. Alright. Let's do that. We need to handle it quickly. Minho's voice agreed. I couldn't listen anymore so I quietly left that place. In the taxi on the way home, tears streamed down my face. Could the child I carried in my womb for 10 months, nursed for 3 years, while raising, really be like this? Is money that important? More precious than tradition carried on for 100 years, more than mother's lifetime? But I still didn't give up. I decided to try persuading Minho one last time. A few days later, I called Minho to sit face to face. Minho, mother will ask you just one favor. Mother, that topic again? Yes, please at least protect the seed soy sauce. That's our family's history. It can't be converted to money. Mother, why is that rotten soy sauce so important? Who eats that stuff these days? It's not rotten. It's fermented. It's the taste created by time. It contains our ancestors' souls. So what? It's just smelly liquid. Mother, look at reality. Minho spoke coldly and stood up. I watched his back and understood. This child was no longer my son. He had become a monster of greed blinded by money. A week later, Sujin came to visit. Unlike usual, her face was kind. Mother, we made a hospital reservation. The knee surgery is scheduled for this Friday. All right, thank you. It's a good hospital in Seoul. After surgery, rest well through rehabilitation. We'll take care of everything so don't worry. I already knew the scheme hidden behind Sujin's smile, but I pretended not to know. Rather, I decided to use it. Alright, I'll do as you say. The day before being hospitalized, I called Manager Kim. Manager Kim, while I'm gone, record everything. CCTV, recordings, photos, whatever, secure evidence. Ma'am, are you really going to do that? Yes. They're not my children. They're thieves. Now I'll handle it legally. Manager Kim nodded and steeled his resolve. I also hardened my heart. There was nowhere left to retreat. What collapses is a moment, but building takes 100 years. The surgery ended safely. Lying in the hospital bed looking at the ceiling, I tried to calm my anxious heart. Manager Kim called every day, but the reports were still that nothing had happened yet. But on the night of the third day, Manager Kim's urgent voice came through the phone. Ma'am, big trouble. Excavators have arrived. What? Right now? Yes, Mrs. Sujin brought workers and is demolishing the fermentation yard. I'm coming now. You must stop them. I jumped out of bed in my hospital gown. Nurses tried to stop me but I caught a taxi and headed to Yangpyeong. In the car my hands and feet trembled. Please let at least the seed soy sauce be safe, I prayed desperately. But when I arrived at the scene, I witnessed a hellish sight. The fermentation yard was already half collapsed. Excavators were trampling the jars, and workers were loading broken jar pieces onto trucks. Stop! Stop right now! I shouted, but no one listened. Then daughter-in-law Sujin covered her nose and yelled at the workers. Hurry up. Break all those smelly rotten soy sauce jars first and dump them in the sewer. If the smell sticks, cafe customers won't come. No. I staggered and ran toward the seed soy sauce jars. I had to protect at least those jars. But one worker blocked my way, and before my eyes the 100-year-old seed soy sauce jar was smashed with a hammer. Crash, bang. The sound of the jar breaking tore my heart. Dark red seed soy sauce poured onto the ground. The soy sauce that great-grandmother made, grandmother inherited, mother protected, and I treasured like life flowed into the sewer. Ah! I fell to my knees right there. I pressed my hands into the dirt floor and sobbed. I had to watch 100 years of time, 4 generations of devotion, collapse in an instant. Mother, why did you come out? You should stay in the hospital. Sujin approached and spoke nonchalantly. I pointed at her with a trembling hand. How could you do this? Mother, this is all rotten anyway. We'll mix chemical seasonings to make the same taste. Times have changed. Now efficiency is important. It's not rotten. It's fermented. Same difference. Anyway, it smells the same. Then Min arrived at the scene. When he saw me, he frowned. Mother, why are you here? You should be in the hospital. Minnow, how could you do this? What are you doing? Mother, do you know how much this land is worth? Why would we live keeping these jars? Get a grip. These jars? This is our family's history. Your roots. Roots what? They're just worthless junk. Mother, face reality. Minnow spoke coldly and urged the excavator driver to continue working. I realized in that moment, these children were no longer my sons. They were monsters of greed wearing human masks. Manager Kim ran over and supported me. Tears were pooling in his eyes too. Ma'am, get up. You can't stay here. Manager Kim, it's all over. 100 years collapsed in an instant. No, it's not. It's not over yet. I recorded everything. Manager Kim took out a small camera from inside his clothes and showed me. He had been recording all this devastation on video. Sujin covering her nose and mocking. Minnow urging the excavator, the breaking jars and flowing seed soy sauce, everything. Thank you, Manager Kim. I wiped my tears and stood up. Looking at the collapsed fermentation yard one last time, I vowed in my heart I would no longer retreat. In the name of the law, in the name of justice, I would punish them. Truth faced at the end of betrayal, and resolve. The night the fermentation yard collapsed, I didn't return to the hospital. I spent the night at Manager Kim's quarters. I couldn't sleep. When I closed my eyes, I saw breaking jars, flowing seed soy sauce. At dawn, I woke Manager Kim. Manager Kim, we need to fight now. Ma'am, is your mind okay? I'm fine. Rather, my mind has become clear. Now I understand. They weren't my children, they were thieves. From that day I began preparing meticulously. I organized the videos and recording files Manager Kim had secured. Evidence captured on CCTV, scenes of Sujin mocking and instructing workers about rotten soy sauce, Minnow urging the excavator, everything on USB. And I went to a capable law firm in Seoul. A young lawyer greeted me. Ma'am, what brings you here? I want to file a lawsuit to cancel the gift deed and also prosecute for property damage. I poured out the contract and evidence materials onto the desk. The lawyer skimmed through the documents and nodded. The violation of conditions stated in the contract is clear. You have video of them breaking the condition to maintain traditional methods and preserve seed soy sauce. Plus there's neglect of support duty, so the chances of winning are high. Then please proceed immediately. There's no time. But ma'am, the other party is your real son. Is that okay? I answered firmly. It's okay. He's no longer my child. Just a monster of greed blinded by money. The lawyer bowed deeply and began preparing documents. As I left the law firm, I made one more decision. I wouldn't just punish them legally, but make them face social judgment too. A few days later, I reported to a broadcast station. A PD from a current affairs program came to see me. Ma'am, this case is truly shocking. May we broadcast it? Of course. Many people need to know, so this kind of unfilial behavior doesn't happen again. The PD took the videos Manager Kim had filmed and promised next week during prime time, they would cover this case as a special feature. Meanwhile, I acted to reassure Minnow and his wife. When they came to visit, I sat there blankly, as if I had lost my mind from shock. Mother, are you okay? Minnow asked with a pretense of concern. I just stared at him blankly. Sujin whispered beside him. Honey, Mother seems to be in great shock. Could it be aphasia or something? Maybe. Well, she's old anyway and at the age for dementia. They left relieved. After they left, I told Manager Kim. Manager Kim, wait until they pay all the cafe construction deposit. The bigger the penalty, the better. Ma'am, you're really scary. Like a goddess of revenge. It's not revenge. It's justice. Just making them pay the appropriate price for the crimes they committed. 2 weeks later, Minho and his wife signed a contract with a large bakery cafe construction company. The deposit alone was 50 million won, and the penalty was 3 times that. When manager Kim brought this news, I smiled coldly. Good. Now the time has come. Revenge coldly, just as hotly. It was the day to review final documents at the lawyer's office. I read through each page carefully. Gift deed cancellation lawsuit, property damage prosecution, neglect of support duty prosecution, cultural property protection law violation report. The lawyer added an explanation. Ma'am, although the seed soy sauce isn't an official cultural property, the manufacturing method and materials of a traditional food master have value equivalent to intangible cultural heritage. Deliberately destroying this is definitely punishable. So criminal punishment is possible too? Yes, it's possible. Plus the video evidence is clear, so it will be hard to deny. I stamped the documents. This one stamp would change the fate of Minho and his wife. Just as they destroyed my life, now it was my turn to destroy their greed. Lawyer, I have one favor. Please tell me. Time the court execution to the cafe groundbreaking ceremony day. All the investors and media will gather that day. The lawyer hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Understood. I'll do that. That night, I visited the collapsed fermentation yard with manager Kim. Under the moonlight, broken jar pieces lay scattered desolately. I knelt down and picked up one broken jar. Great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, and me. I couldn't protect this tradition that 4 generations guarded. But I won't give up. I will definitely take it back. Manager Kim quietly said beside me. Ma'am, there are still remaining materials. All the seed soy sauce spilled out, but we still have soybean blocks, salt, and water. Right, we can start again. Even if not 100 years, we can brew again. I held the broken jar piece in my arms. I would make new jars with these pieces. Rising again from what collapsed. Isn't that the real way to continue tradition? Meanwhile, Minho and his wife were busy preparing the cafe, knowing nothing. They set the groundbreaking ceremony date, invited investors, and distributed press releases to media. They promoted with the title Innovative Bakery Cafe made by the son of a traditional fermented food master. Soojin posted interior design drafts on social media to show off. Minho showed investors rosy business plans. They believed their future was rosy. But I knew that rosy fantasy would soon turn into a nightmare. The day before the groundbreaking ceremony, the broadcast station contacted me. Ma'am, it airs tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock. I think the ratings will be good. Thank you. I hope many people watch. I hung up the phone and looked out the window. Tomorrow everything would end. No, it would begin anew. A new beginning, rising again from what collapsed. Manager Kim handed me a cup of tea and said, Ma'am, tomorrow is D-Day. Yes, like slowly fermented soy sauce. The revenge I've been slowly ripening completes tomorrow. I took a sip of tea and smiled. It wasn't a smile of revenge. It was the calm smile of one reclaiming justice. The splendid beginning was a prelude to a miserable end. On the morning of the groundbreaking ceremony, the sky was clear. Minho and his wife arrived at the site early in the morning and busily prepared. A large banner reading Seoul Bar and Bakery Cafe groundbreaking ceremony fluttered. At 11 o'clock in the morning, investors and subcontractor officials arrived one after another. Soojin wore a fancy dress and greeted guests. Minho wore a suit and was busy explaining the business plan. A cafe and bakery factory of 300 pyeong scale will be built on this site. Expected annual sales are over 3 billion won. Investors nodded and applauded. The atmosphere ripened, and at noon the ribbon-cutting ceremony began. Now, let's cut the tape. 1, 2, 3. Right at that moment, with horn sounds, several vehicles rushed into the site. Court enforcement officers, police, and even broadcast cameras. What's going on? Minho asked in confusion. The court enforcement officer held out documents. You're Kang Minho? We came for gift deed cancellation enforcement. And you've been sued for property damage and neglect of support duty. What? That's nonsense, Soojin shouted. But the police also handed her documents. Jang Soojin is also a co-defendant. You need to accompany us for investigation. Investors began to murmur. Broadcast cameras captured that scene intact. Then the large screen installed at the site suddenly turned on. On the screen played video of Soojin covering her nose and shouting at workers. Break all those smelly rotten soy sauce jars first and dump them in the sewer. The sound of jars shattering, flowing black liquid, and Minho's mocking face. Everything was exposed nakedly. One investor stood up abruptly and shouted, "What the hell is this? You people were scammers?" "No, it's a misunderstanding." Minho tried to explain, but it was already too late. Investors were enraged, and subcontractor officials tore up contracts. The site instantly became chaos. Right then, I appeared at the scene in a wheelchair. Manager Kim pushed the wheelchair, and the lawyer accompanied beside. I was handed a microphone and slowly opened my mouth. Everyone, I am Choi Youngja. I'm a certified master who has made traditional fermented foods for 50 years, and the original owner of this land. People focused on me. I continued speaking. I trusted my child. I believed those words about inheriting the tradition. But as soon as they received the property transfer, they smashed the 100-year-old seed soy sauce and dumped my life's soul into the sewer. My voice trembled but had strength. Those who abandoned the soul embedded in this land have no right to step on even a handful of this earth. Leave my home right now. The court enforcement officer stepped forward. Since condition violation and neglect of support duty are clear, we execute the eviction order on site. Minnow approached me. His face was pale. Mother, please. We'll be ruined. We have loan shark debts, and we have to pay the cafe penalty. That's for you to figure out. I no longer recognize you as my child. Mother. Minnow knelt down, but I turned my head. There was nothing more to see or hear. Manager Kim turned the wheelchair and left the scene. Behind me I heard Sujin's crying and Minnow's sighing, but I didn't look back. That evening, the broadcast station covered this case as a special feature with the title Unfilial Child Who Abandoned the Master's Soul. A new beginning blooming from the collapsed place. A year passed since then. Minnow and Sujin couldn't handle the cafe construction penalty of 150 million won, loan shark debts, and the 500 million won in damages I claimed. Eventually they became credit delinquents reduced to wandering from Jjimjilbang to Jjimjilbang. Even hearing news of them, my heart no longer ached. They were no longer my children. Just one thing, I only hoped they would someday realize their wrongdoing. With the land and property I recovered, I started something new. I made an agreement to donate the site to the nation and establish Solbarum Traditional Fermentation Culture School. I wanted to teach tradition to the young generation and tell them what real value is. Manager Kim completed formal education courses and became a new successor. He became a teacher who teaches students now. Ma'am, it's the first class today, so I'm nervous. You'll do well. You're the person who knows best. On opening day, 30 students gathered. There were young people, housewives, and retired elderly people. All were people who wanted to learn real tradition. I stood before the students. In my hands was a new jar made from broken jar pieces. Everyone, look at this jar. It's made from broken pieces. Students looked with curiosity. Tradition isn't something that never breaks. Sometimes it collapses too. But what's important is rising again. Gathering broken pieces to make a new jar. I began putting soybean blocks and salt water into the jar. Students followed one by one. Fermented foods are crafted by time. If you rush, the taste won't come out. Slowly, with care, you wait. Manager Kim helped beside me. And most importantly, you must put in sincerity. Not for money, but with the heart to make really good fermented foods. After class ended, I walked the fermentation yard alone. Newly made jars stood in rows. The 100-year-old seed soy sauce had disappeared, but new fermented foods were fermenting. Sunlight filled the empty yard. Wind blew and shook pine branches. I looked up at the sky and murmured, "Great-grandmother, grandmother, mother." I started again. Though not 100 years, I'll create a new 100 years. Then a student approached. A young man who looked about 25. "Teacher, I have a question." "Yes, tell me." "What's most important in making fermented foods?" I thought for a moment then answered, "Heart. A sincere heart. Not greed to make money, but sincerity to want to make good fermented foods." "Then how do you put in that heart?" "By spending time. Checking the jars every day, confirming fermentation state, carefully managing. That's the way to put in heart." The young man nodded and turned back. I watched that back and smiled. That young man will someday become an excellent craftsperson, making fermented foods with sincerity, not money. In the evening, Manager Kim brought tea. We sat at the spot where the fermentation yard had collapsed and drank tea. "Ma'am, don't you regret it?" "What? Going that far with your son?" I shook my head. "I don't regret it. Rather it was the right thing to do. That way those children will learn too, that there are things more important than money, but their family. Just because their family doesn't mean forgiving everything. Wrong is wrong, and prices must be paid." Manager Kim didn't speak further. We quietly drank tea and watched the sunset scenery. That night, I stood before the newly made jar. When I opened the lid, a subtle fermentation smell rose. It was just freshly made, so it didn't have the deep taste like seed soy sauce, but still I felt hope. "You emptied to fill again," I murmured and covered the lid. 100 years collapsed, but a new 100 years began. This time not greed blinded by money, but sincere apprentices will continue it. A small tree planted in one corner of the yard swayed in the wind. A young tree newly planted instead of the cut old tree. Small now, but someday it will become a large tree and protect this place. I looked up at the sky one last time. Stars were twinkling. "Great-grandmother, grandmother, Mother must be watching over me from somewhere among those stars. I'll protect it well, for real this time. Wind blew and brushed my white hair. I slowly returned home. Tomorrow another new day would begin. A day of making fermented foods, teaching students, and continuing tradition. That's how my story ended, not as an ending but as a new beginning.